Well, hi again, crochet friends. Thanks for clicking into my channel, and it's good to see you again. I'm going to show you a really popular crochet stitch today. This one is so popular, in fact, that I see it on patterns all the time. This is a big blanket pattern. A lot of people love to use this for blankets. I've seen it on hats. I've seen it on baskets. I've seen it on sweaters. I mean, it's all over the place. And it's one that you should really learn how to do if you want to take advantage of some of the patterns that are out there, or just to learn the stitch in general. This is a gorgeous stitch, and it's fairly easy to make. So I'm going to show you how to do it today. This pattern specifically is going to, well, not pattern, this stitch pattern specifically is going to take up quite a bit of yarn. So if you're thinking about using it for a project, just keep in mind it works up pretty bulky, and it definitely uses up yarn. So have a lot on hand for whatever you'll be working on. So as always, we're going to start this out with a slip stitch. I've already done mine. And we're going to work the project in multiples of 3. So I'm going to do 3, 6, 9. I'm going to do 21 stitches. I'll do 7 repeats of this. And then you're going to add 2 for the foundation row. So for me, multiples of 3, I'm going to do 21 stitches plus 2. I'm going to put 23 chains on my hook. Okay. If you're following me, you should have 23 chains on your hook. Make the swatch as big as you want, or the project as big as you want. If you're brave, you could even start a blanket with this, just with what I'm showing you. But anyway, if you've got 23 chains on your hook at this point, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to make a double crochet in the 3rd chain from the hook. And then we are going to double crochet all the way across. This pattern pretty much uses double crochet throughout the whole thing. The thing that gives it its texture is going to be a front post double crochet. So I'll show you that as we go, but for right now we are working double crochets in the 1st row all the way across. And we're going to want 21 stitches by the time we're finished with this. I have no idea what kind of yarn this is. I haven't crocheted in about, well, I've been crocheting more lately, but I hadn't crocheted in about 7 to 8 years. I got into a band, and that band very, very quickly consumed, I'd say, about 85% of my waking energy outside of going to work. And crochet kind of just fell to the wayside, but I loved it. And, you know, I was even making patterns 8 years or so ago. I never sold any, but I was making some. And while I've been filming these videos, I've been thinking, you know, I should really release some of those patterns, but time will tell. We'll see what happens. For now, I'm just using up a lot of yarn that I've either had given to me or bought over the years. And I figured what better way to do that than to make these stitch tutorials. So if you are following along with me right now, you're going to be at the end of this row with 21 stitches. If you've watched any of my videos, I like to count them just to make sure. I'd rather fix a problem now than have to go back later. So let's count it real quick. 1, All right, I have 21 stitches on my first row of double crochets. So if you're not there yet, feel free to pause. If you are, let's move on. The first thing we're going to do is chain 2 for this stitch. And the way I've always done it, I do not count this as a stitch. So we're going to go into the first chain, or first stitch, and double crochet 1. And now here's where the pattern begins. So for this row, we're going to start with our next stitch by doing a front post double crochet. Now if you've done that before, you know how to do it, go for it, and I will be right with you. But if you haven't, here's how it works. So we're going to make a double crochet like we normally would, yarn over, but instead of going into this stitch right here on top, we are going to go down into the double crochet from the row before. So the only difference is that we go down into this stitch rather than the top. And then we yarn over, pull up, and yarn over, pull through, like we normally would with a double crochet. And then in the next 2 stitches, we are going to make a regular double crochet. And then in the next one, we're going to make another front post double crochet. So as you're working through this, you can start to see it come together. You already know where you did your last front post double crochet. So let's count through 2, 1, 2, and we're going to do this third one as a front post double crochet. And then we're going to move on and do 2 more normal double crochets in the top of our stitch. Count down 2 more here. So what I mean when count down is go to that last front post double crochet and then count 2 over, and we're going to go in here. Another way you can look at it is, you know, even though you've gone into the front post double crochet here, the top of that stitch is going to show up right here. And then you're going to, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Like, you're not going into the top of the stitch, you're going into the front post, and that creates the texture. But to stay even with the row, I always like to count down, or count over rather, so that I know that my stitches are accurate. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. With these tutorials, I hope I'm not going too fast or too slow, but you know, everybody learns a little bit of a different style, different pace. So I might be for some and not for others, and that's totally fine. Anyway, I'm gabbing today. Wow, I'm talking a lot on this tutorial. Okay, so we're going to make 2 more double crochets. And then we're just going to keep going with that same rhythm all the way to the end of the row. So what we're doing is, for every 1 front post, we're doing 2 more regular double crochets in the stitches following that. And then in the next row, we'll basically do the opposite, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. I tend to do that sometimes. Okay, so keep working until we get to the point where there are only 2 stitches left on this row. So if you're following with me, I've got two stitches here. There we go. Okay, so for these last 2 stitches, we're going to do one more front post double crochet. And then one more normal, regular double crochet. And that is the end of our second row there. Our first row where the stitch pattern really starts to show, but second row for the sake of argument. Okay, so we're moving on to the next row here. And we are going to do a chain 2 and a turn. So now this row is going to be the polar opposite of the last row. So we are going to double crochet into the first 2. And then we're going to do 2 front post double crochets, followed by a single double crochet. And then again, 2 more front post. Now what's fun about this pattern is that you will start to see the texture start to take shape. Sorry, I can't think and talk at the same time sometimes, so maybe I shouldn't talk as much, but that's okay. Okay, one more regular double crochet here. Again, we're going to repeat this same pattern all the way across. Once you've got the first set, it's pretty repetitive. So the pattern here is going to be 1 regular double crochet and then 2 front post. The last row we did 2 regular double crochets and 1 front post. But when we come into this row, we are working into the regular double crochets from the last row, and that's what starts to build the texture, which you'll start to see a few rows in, it becomes more clear. And then you start to get that that famous checker texture with the raised squares on the edges. I've always thought it would be fun to do this with like some sort of a plaid pattern. But I have admittedly never looked for any that call for it or that use that kind of technique. So if you have one, a recommendation, I'm not opposed. Okay, so if you're with me, on your last 2 stitches, we're just going to do 2 regular double crochets. And then we'll chain 2. Now for this tutorial, I'm going to go up a few rows because I want you to start seeing how this takes shape. So I was kind of talking about how the patterns are opposite, right? Or each row does the opposite thing. Well, on this one, we're going to go back to our pattern where we were doing 1 double crochet in the first stitch and then 1 front post right away. And then after that, it'll be 2 regulars, 1 front post, 2 regulars, 1 front post, all the way across. I'll show you how that works up here. So we've got 2 regular double crochets right away. And then a front post, double crochet. Work that same pattern all the way across, 2 regulars, 1 front post. And now in this third row, you already know where the ridges are, so it becomes pretty easy and pretty mindless, frankly, to go through and know when your next front post is going to be. I love a mindless stitch, a stitch that you just don't have to pay much attention to as you're going, and you can just work away. I think I said that in the last video I filmed, but there are some stitches where you can just get going and you got a TV show on or a podcast or a YouTube video. And that's what life is all about. All right. If you're following with me or getting close to the end, we're going to end it with one front post double crochet in the second to last stitch and one regular in the last one. Now again, if I'm going too fast, you are more than welcome to pause the video. You know, if there's any feedback in there, I've watched various stitch tutorials over the years, and I appreciate both tutorial styles. I like the ones that really break it down and go slow, especially if it's something that I don't know very well. But I also really appreciate the ones that go a little bit faster. Don't be afraid to tell me what you need or what you would like to see or what pace works the best. Okay, so now we're going to go into this next row and do the opposite of what we just did before. So in the last row we were doing one regular double crochet, then two regulars, and then one front post. So we're going to go to one regular and two front posts. So first stitch, we're going to do a regular double crochet, and we're going to do another regular, and then our two front posts. Now another thing worth noting on these patterns, on this stitch pattern specifically, is that there's kind of like a bookend stitch. I don't know what else to call it, but our pattern begins, it's worked in multiples of 3. And the way it works on the row is at the end of each row there's a double crochet to kind of hold the foundation together before the stitch pattern starts. So on this row we did our, I'm going to call it our bookend stitch, but then we also did, so we had our bookend right here, and then our pattern of one regular and two front posts begins. I hope that made sense. I'll show you when we get to the end of this row too, what I mean by that. This is a very pretty pattern to work up. Like I've seen it on gorgeous blankets. And again, it's been several years since I've done a big project, but I learn new stitches all the time, and I'm like, man, this would be a beautiful blanket, or this would be a beautiful blanket. It's like I can't pick. Well, this waffle stitch is very complimentary, and the way it works up, you know, it's a pretty bulky stitch. So any blanket that it would be made into, and I bet that sucker would be pretty warm in the winter. Now, I'm up in Wisconsin, so a warm blanket in the winter is chef's kiss. Okay, and we're getting to the end here. The end of that row was 2 regular double crochets. So if you learned something today, if this helped at all, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to leave me a little feedback if there's anything that I could do to make these easier to follow along with, or if there's anything you want me to show you how to do. And I'll be back with another tutorial soon. Y'all have a great day. Thanks.